Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into something a bit different. We are descending into the dark, dramatic world of the alchemy of the Crimson Will. Now this isn't just some spooky story, it's a grim gothic fable that actually serves as a pretty profound philosophical deep dive. We're going to use a classic Fichte dialogue, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, to map out this apocalyptic clash between a stagnant artificial order and the violent, frankly terrifying reality of the universe.
To really set the stage here, listen to this opening motif from the source material. Strange, the castle keeps no looking glass in its corridors. The king does not believe in them. A man of power needs no confirmation of his face. He knows his face. He has been told his face by every courtier paid to find it admirable. And yet, here is a mirror, standing in the corridor as though it has always stood here. That brilliantly sets up the core theme of our fable. An entire kingdom, absolutely terrified of its own reflection, suddenly forced to confront the abyss it's tried so hard to ignore.
Part 1. Thesis. The Mask of Reason. So this old world, symbolized by the Knight of Reason and the Reaper, enjoys this stagnant peace. And it's built entirely on a rigid, absolute morality that uses the fear of terminal judgment to keep everyone in line. The psychological mechanism at play here is what the sources call the Apollonian illusion. See, the knight actually believes he's defending objective truths, but these truths are really just fragile protections. They're constructed, highly predictable definitions of the divine, specifically designed to hide the staggering, empty nothingness of a godless universe.
Which brings us to a fundamental, completely brutal, nihilistic realization within the fable. Reason is but a painted mask upon the face of the nothing. That pristine armor the knight wears, the sacred laws of the land, they are just an elaborate facade. It turns out, the universe doesn't actually care about the laws of the land. There is no ultimate meaning provided by the heavens, it's all just a comfortable, static illusion.
Part 2. Antithesis. The Mirror of the Shadow.
Well, a thesis inevitably invites its opposite, right? If the knight is the mask, the crimson jester is the mirror. He's this violent, totally irrational force that arrives to shatter the knight's cracked armor of reason with a jagged blade, forcing a real confrontation with reality. But the jester isn't just a villain. He is the literal manifestation of the Jungian shadow made flesh. He represents all those primal, violent, irrational instincts that this cold, calculating kingdom has so desperately tried to bury. He's the repressed chaos bursting out like lava.
Look at the absolute nihilism dividing these two forces. You have the Knight of Reason, representing slave morality, stagnant peace, and those Apollonian illusions we talked about. And then, opposing him is the Crimson Jester, fueled entirely by the will to power, a vital, creative flame, and the pure Dionysian abyss. The Jester literally uses the corpse of the old world's morality as raw material, using his own blood as living ink to just mock the dogmatic ideals of the past.
Part 3. The Purifying Nihilistic Void. The Great Star Rises. This violent collision triggers a massive cosmic event in our fable, the rise of the Great Star. It's described as a blinding molten crimson fire that completely bleaches the heavens of their tired, piteous gods. It signals the final incineration of the old world's illusions, replacing their stagnant peace with the terrifying silence of the abyss. But here's where the philosophy takes a really fascinating turn. This descent into absolute nihilism. It is not about passive despair. It is a purifying abyss. It incinerates those weak illusions and serves as the only honest foundation for a sovereign existence. The void becomes a tragic catalysis that clears the way for self-determined creation.
Part 4. Philological Transvaluation. The Archaic Shift.
Under the light of this great star, the realm undergoes what the sources call a philological transvaluation. Essentially, the very linguistic and moral framework of the wasteland gets permanently altered. Words lose their old moralistic weight and revert to something much older and raw. Think about it. In the old slave morality, good meant safe, meek, and beautiful, while bad was anything strong, wild, or grotesque. But post-transvaluation, good reverts to its archaic, noble meaning. Now it's the strong, the vital, and the life-affirming, even if it's visually grotesque. Bad is simply that which is weak, stagnant, or frozen in ice.
Part 5. The Jester's Index. Aphorisms of the Abyss.
To guide us through this unvarnished landscape, the fable gives us the Jester's Index, these philosophical stepping stones across the ashes. They're the rules for a Dionysian dance in a godless universe. We've already covered the Mask of Reason, and that total transvaluation of good and bad.
But the third one tells us that true mastery is harboring wildfire within a shattered shell, meaning you command the chaos, you don't deny it. And finally, sovereignty is the gift of the blade, not the decree of the heavens. An autonomous lawgiver doesn't ask permission from the stars. They claim their authority solely through an unvarnished will to power.
Part 6. The Seventh Solitude. Embracing the Silence.
Now, to actually live by these aphorisms, one has to enter a state called the seventh solitude. This is a domain of active nihilism. It's where an individual steps entirely beyond the safe, predictable boundaries of society and fully embraces the terrifying, purifying silence of the void. In the seventh solitude, there's no societal guilt binding you, and there is absolutely no divine decree telling you what your life means. As the source says, meaning must be carved directly into the cold meat of the world. You have to forge your own meaning using your will to power.
Part 7. Synthesis. Rise of the Proto-Übermensch.
And that brings us to the climax of our Fichtean dialogue. We have the thesis of the knight, the antithesis of the jester. Now, born from the agonizing psychological death of the knight's artificial ego, we get the synthesis, the rise of a new, monstrous sovereign, the Proto-Übermensch. This is a sovereign architect who has actually survived the total collapse of their constructed reality. They refuse to look up to the heavens for validation. Instead, they define their own existence to the destruction of dogmatic ideals, literally smashing the old tablets so they can write their own laws.
In the fable, this new entity takes on a dual physical manifestation, both of them animated by the jester's living ink. On one side, we have the ugliest man, who murders the heavens' pity with his grotesque sovereignty, completely integrating the shadow and rejecting that fragile Apollonian beauty. On the other side is the soothsayer of the seventh solitude. Possessing peak psychological resilience, the soothsayer speaks the dark illumination of the void and acts as the guide for the Dionysian dance.
So, practically speaking, how does the Proto-Übermensch achieve this? It's a grueling process. First, the knight has to endure the agonizing psychological death of his artificial ego. Second, and this is key, he doesn't just throw away reason, he retains that cracked armor as a hollow vessel. And third, he accepts his internal chaos as a creative force. The knight channels the Dionysian abyss, his own wildfire, right inside that shattered shell. It proves that true strength lies in the containment and command of chaos, not its sterile denial. Which leads to the ultimate realization of this dark fable. Once you accept that absolute nihilistic void and you command your internal shadow, the disenchanted wasteland completely transforms. Like the jester declares, the void is no longer a grave, it is our throne. The wasteland becomes the ultimate, boundless canvas for self-determined creation.
We've traversed this Fichtean clash, we've witnessed the crushing of old moralities, and we've seen the monstrous synthesis of the Proto-Übermensch. It's a lot to take in. But I want to leave you with a final thought to consider about your own psychological resilience. If your own armor of reason were shattered today, if you were forced right now to confront your Jungian shadow, what would you create on the canvas of the terrifying void? Think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.